Okay, so now that we know how to actually verify users' emails, let's add some logic to our server that will protect our endpoints from users that aren't verified trying to access our site, right? Because currently, if a user tries to log in, even if they haven't verified their email yet, right? Let's try that with my email without the test label, which we haven't actually verified yet. There we go. And going to put in the password. What we're going to be able to do, we're going to be able to actually log in and see everything and use the application without having to verify our email. Now, that's obviously not what we want. So we're going to actually need to add two things. The first thing is we're going to need to add logic to our login page, or perhaps the rest of our application, that makes sure that the user is verified before we allow them to see our content. And B, since the user can edit our front-end code, that's just how front-end web development works, we're going to need to add that same protection to the back end, right? And that's pretty much going to have to protect all of the resources we don't want users to be able to touch before they verify their email, which is all of them. So without further ado, let's start off on the back end, okay? So we're going to open up our... Here, I'm just going to close this other one so that I stop getting confused there. We're going to open up our back-end code. And what we're going to do here is we're going to actually create a middleware function that will take care of this logic for us. So let's say new file, and we're going to call this file user email is verified. That's kind of a lengthy name, but again, it's fine. Let's just go with it. So now let's export const user email is verified. Oops, there we go. And this is going to take request, response, and next, just like the rest of the middleware functions that we've seen. And it's also going to need to be async, and we need to add an arrow to the arrow function. And then inside here, all we're going to need to do is check whether or not the user is actually verified. And this is actually surprisingly easy if we put it after the verify auth token middleware, because we already have the user. So literally all we have to do is say return request.user.email verified. Okay, that's the same property that we set inside our verify email route here on our Firebase user, right? We set that to true. So if this is true, then we're all good, right? We can send the user through. Oh, and actually we don't want to say return that. We just want to say if request.user.email verified, then we want to say next and send the user on to whatever the route is or the next middleware. And then we're going to say else. And inside here, we're going to just say response.sendStatus. And for this status here, we're going to use 403 because the user may well have provided a valid auth token, but they're not authorized to actually access this resource because their email hasn't been verified. So that's how that's going to work. Just to prevent errors here, we should probably say request.user and request.user.email verified, even though that request.user should be there in most of our routes. Cool, that's our middleware. That's really all we have to do for that one. So let's go to our different routes here and add that middleware to them. So we're not going to need this middleware on our verify email route because obviously we want users to be able to make requests to this without being verified, since that's the point of the route. But some of our other routes, in fact, most of them, we're probably going to want to add this middleware too. So create note route, for sure, we're going to need that one in here. So we're just going to, after verify auth token, of course, say user email is verified, and it looks like we're going to have to import that one here. So we'll say import user email is verified from .. Oops, there we go, .. middleware / user email is verified. And that's all we should need to do. So let's give this thing a try right now. We're already logged in as a user that is not verified, which again, we shouldn't be able to do in the first place, but for now, just go with it. So let's try to create a new note and see what our server thinks about it. Okay, so we're going to open up our network tab so that we can see it. We're going to click add a new note, and we'll say, does this work? We'll click on create now, and we should get a 403 response code back. Okay, that's exactly what we wanted to happen. That is our middleware at work. So, on the other hand, let's actually try and log out and log in with a user that is verified. So we're going to say Sean, and we'll have my email here with the test2. That's the one that we verified, if you recall. and we'll type the rest of the email. And then we're going to say our password and click login. And this account should be able to add a new note. So we'll just have the network tab open just in case. Oops, there we go. And let's try and add a new note now. We're going to say, does this work? And we should be able to create it. Okay. Oops, it looks like we got 403 here. So let's take a look at what's going on. All right, if we open up our user email is verified middleware here, what we're going to do is log out the request.user that we have. So we'll say console.log request.user, and we'll see what's going on here. So our server should have restarted nicely. And let's try this again. We're going to do add note. We're going to say, does this work? We're going to click create, and we should see something logged out from the server now. So let's open that up. And here's something that I always forget about. The email verified property is actually expressed with an underscore here. So email verified needs to be email underscore verified. I have no idea why they suddenly do that here, because it's definitely in snake case when we set it in our email verification route. So I don't know, who knows? Great, so hopefully we fixed that. Let's give this another try. We're gonna try and add a note. We're gonna say enter a title. Does this work? Click on create, and sure enough, that note shows up. So let's just test this one more time to make sure it wasn't a fluke with a non-verified email. We're gonna put in our email address of an email that we haven't verified yet, and the password, of course, and we'll click login. And let's try and add a note here. We should see that we get a 403 again, but you never know, so let's just try it. Does this work? Click create, and sure enough, we get a 403. Cool, so it looks like that middleware is working properly for us, and I'm glad that we tested it out on this one before adding it to all of our routes, because that would have made it much harder to actually figure out what was going on. All right, so we converted our create note route over so that it's now secure from non-verified users making requests to it. Create user route, that one's not going to need one because, of course, when a user is created, just kind of by definition, their email hasn't been verified, so don't have to worry about that one. For delete note route, this one isn't that big of a deal because, right, if a user's email isn't verified, they probably haven't created any emails, so there's nothing they can do here. But nevertheless, it's probably just a good idea to add this anyway, just in case any logic changes up or downstream. So we're just going to say here, user email is verified. And we'll import that up here, of course. User email is verified from ... middleware / user email is verified. I'm just going to copy this import here because I'm going to need it later in a lot of other ones, and I'm tired of typing it. So for the list notes route, this one we definitely need this for as well. What we're going to do is just import that, and we're going to go down here to middleware and say user email is verified. And for share note route, we'll do the same thing. We're going to want the user's email to be verified before they can do that. Again, this one isn't a huge deal, but you know, why not? It's just one extra line of code. And then in here we'll say user email is verified. Okay, and for the next ones here, let's say share note route. We already did that one actually. Unshare note route. Might as well add it to this one as well. We'll just add that in here right before user owns note. So we'll say user email is verified. And for update note route, this one is going to need it as well. So let's just add it in here again before user can edit note. We'll say user email is verified. And the last one here is verify email route, which we don't need to do, obviously, because that's the route for verifying emails. Cool. So one thing you might be wondering here is why we chose this specific order. In other words, why did we put user email is verified before user can edit note or user owns note? Now, the reason we did that is because this stuff really goes kind of in a chain of command fashion. What I mean by that is we want the more severe errors to be up front and the more specific errors to be in the back, right? So verifying an auth token, if a user tries to send a request without an auth token, then they're definitely doing something wrong. And that's our first order of business, right? We don't care if the user can edit the note if we don't even know who the user is. So that's why this one is almost always the first middleware we use. Now, as for why we put user email as verified before user can edit note or user owns note, that's just because that's a higher priority than those other things too, right? If the user's email isn't verified, we don't care if they can edit the note or if they're the owner of the note. They just shouldn't be able to make that request at all. So that's why we've put it in this position here. So anyway, let's just test this thing out. First of all, we're logged in as an unverified email, so I'm going to refresh the page. And we're going to see, we should see anyway, that notes returns a 403, right? So the list notes route returning 403, just like we want it to. We already saw that we can't add a note, and obviously we also can't update or share or unshare a note because we can't even get to those pages here. Even if we could, we wouldn't be able to load them. So let's log out here. We're going to click log out and log back in with a verified email user. So I'll just type that in here, test2. There we go. And the password here we'll put in as well. We'll say login. And sure enough, it looks like everything is working here. Here, let me just refresh the page with all of those other things gone. Yep, so we're getting a 200 status code there. If we try and delete a note, that works as well. If we add a note like that, click create, that works just the same. Let's click on the note and try and do something like share it, I suppose. We'll try and share it with someone else. We'll say jim@gmail.com. We're never going to be able to verify that email because, well, we don't own it, but we'll share it anyway. Okay, cool. So we see jim@gmail.com view. That was a 200 status code as well. Let's unshare it with Jim. Again, 200 status code. The last thing to test is if we can edit this correctly. So let's just add some stuff in here. We'll say code is cool. Click Save Changes. And oops, it looks like something went wrong with that one for some reason. So let's go back into our server and see if some kind of error occurred. All right, it looks like we're printing these things out. Here, let's actually remove that console log statement from our middleware because that's kind of cluttering things up a little bit and making it hard to see. All right, so let's try this again. What we're going to do here is we're going to try editing this note again. We're going to click Save Changes, and we're going to see some kind of error going on here. So let's see what the error is. Cannot read property role of undefined. Let's find that thing. So this is in our format shared note file, it looks like. We probably just forgot to check and see if something was undefined there. And all we need to do here is make sure that this note.sharedwith.find thing exists, right? Make sure it returns a value before saying .role. So in order to do that, I'm just going to remove this out of here, make it something separate. So we'll say something like matching, we'll say const matching role or matching setting, something like that. And then we just need to say matching setting and matching setting dot role for the value there. Cool, so that should make that work now. Let's give this one more try. We're going to say edit. We're going to click Save Changes. And sure enough, we see that that request actually worked this time. Cool, so what we've done here is we've protected all of our server routes from users who have not verified their emails, and this makes our application much more secure, since in order to actually interact with our app in any way, we have to know who a user is. Now, of course, users could always go in and create new emails just for the purpose of trying to hack our site, but, you know, that just makes it one step harder for would-be abusers of our site. So anyway, we've come a long way toward really integrating user authentication and email verification into our site. So I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.